Issue 156. After a few panels are wasted reiterating what we already know, Sonic is naturally angry at how Knuckles wouldn't help him at all. Why did he ever think he would help him to begin with, let alone be the most reliable one? Sonic thinks that all he sees of Patch is a big wuss, even though Patch has been the opposite of a wuss, throwing himself into battle against SWATbots on that one mission, and it's implied that was a regular event for him. It's obvious that this is less Sonic insulting Patch, and more him regressing back to his complete lack of respect for Antoine from childhood, because he's annoyed with him. He actually did call a wuss. While Sonic stares sadly at the banquet hall, thinking selfishly that Sally should be with him, the guards go after Sonic with swords because Patch instructed them to keep him out of the way, and somehow they decide to follow Patch's orders instead of respecting the hero of the world they all owe their lives to. All because Patch is on the way to becoming the new king. Lawful stupidity is a powerful thing. After Sally has a kind of cold-hearted looking moment where she sides with Patch over Sonic, which makes sense because of her obsession with honor and duty, making her support her husband just because. That lapse of logic on her part is followed by someone on a horse with a blue cloak being led in by the guards. We then hear Patch being called out, and since when does a commander outrank a member of the royal family? Open the cell door at once! Oh, Elias! He showed up because his wife pointed out that nothing is more dangerous than transfers of power. He says that the only way to be certain of a good outcome is for him to claim the throne, changing his mind about his simple country life because he cares more about doing the right thing. This is why I admire him. He approaches Patch, who still has the needle of poison, about to use it on the king. When Elias reveals that he's going to assume the crown later on, Patch looks really menacing, thinking of Elias as a blemish on Mobius, deciding that he has to be dealt with first. When Elias arrives at the coronation of Sally, Sonic gets suspicious of Patch because he looks cool as a cucumber, and realizes that he has to have something planned. It's revealed that Elias' stepchild is ineligible in the line of succession because only the royal blood may sit on the throne. Stepchild? So his wife was pregnant when he met her? He's not really a father? There was no indication of that. Elias holds Sally's hands, explaining, "I abandoned the throne because of love, and now it's because of love that I must accept it." And both times, the love was sibling love for a sibling that he only recently met. That's sweet. Alicia says, "My son, you have no idea how much I've longed for you to take your rightful place and make him the king of the kingdom." Wait, wasn't Sally having issues with not being in charge at all earlier? At the very least, there is hope that Elias would stay out of the freedom fighters' business instead of trying to veto their plans while he does nothing to help them. I trust him a lot more than an obstructive bureaucrat, probably because he's closer to their age. And Sally's not old enough to handle being a queen, I think. Too much pressure. Patch considers disposing of Elias' wife and child later on, considering them to be more likely candidates for the new royal family than him, and decides that a simple handshake with a needle in his sleeve will be what gets rid of Elias. The thing is though, wouldn't Elias notice a prick in his arm from that and immediately Patch would get in trouble? He really wasn't thinking this through. He's that desperate, I guess. After Sally and Elias adorably hug, Sonic fortunately is keen enough to spot the needle in Patch's sleeve and tackles him in rage as Patch for some reason is still under the delusion that he has any power over him after that. He somehow thinks that people will think of Sonic as the traitor and not him. He punches Patch in the chest, and fortunately out of complete nowhere considering Sonic was thinking of Patch by the same wuss insult that Antoine got earlier, Sonic figures out that Patch is actually Patch. Not only because he's a better fighter and lacked a killer instinct, as Sonic oddly put it, but because as Sonic awesomely put it. But you know what the real clincher was? When no one, not even Bunny, could explain how you got that scar. He says this while punching him in a place I can't tell, so it's not satisfying that he sent him flying. Then he pulls out the teleporter device from Boomer that he conveniently had with him at the moment, and says that he's going to send him back to where he belonged. Sonic then shows up at Patch's old room, where Antoine is sleeping in a bed looking all sympathetic and relatable because he's in some pajamas. Sadly, we never get to see what the entirety of his room on Anti-Mobius looks like, as it's all dark with his bed and him being inexplicably well lit, so there's no excuse for it. What's that thing on his nightstand? What does it spell out? I guess we'll never know. He expresses surprise and relief that Sonic truly is his friend, which means a lot. I wonder if he was doubting that Sonic was his friend at all. And while showing how much he cares about Antoine, Sonic doesn't tell him everything about Patch's plan right away and what he did, because that would ruin the happy moment, to put it lightly. Sally's relieved at getting her annulment because it's like the wedding never happened. And Bunny gets Antoine back, kissing him immediately, full of relief that he never stopped loving her. I'd like to point out that this is literally the third time they've ever kissed on screen. And this is the most romantic that any couple gets in this comic. The fact that people actually call it a romance drama when it's so pathetically tame is embarrassing. Even Antoine and Bunny barely kiss at all. Anyways, Sonic says he wasn't surprised that Bunny took Antoine back so easily because she never fell out of love with him. Fiona says she saw her putting the moves on him not too long ago, and for some reason, instead of Sonic explaining immediately that was Scourge, to who knows what result, he idiotically doesn't clarify that, and instead says that Bunny was just trying to get Antoine jealous. I agree with Fiona's charming suspicion here. Bunny really enjoyed that time with Scourge, not because she liked Scourge, but because she missed Antoine and was desperate for the amount of affection he was giving her, and the hope it brought her. In fact, I don't think trying to make Antoine jealous was even a thought that crossed her mind. I'd like to point out this is literally the second time they've gotten to see Fiona having a good chemistry friendship moment with one of the Freedom Fighters, aside from her saying, "Let's party" with them that one time. Sure, she's been with them, doing nothing, but this is the first time she ever had anything like this, and dozens of issues. They really didn't care about this character, did they? The story ends with Sonic saying about their relationship, "Honestly, we're young and there's no rush." And Fiona lampshades musingly, "You really know how to sweet-talk a girl off her feet," without having a huge problem with it, being accepting of how Sonic is, as the two of them are holding hands, showing more chemistry in this one scene that Sonic and Sally had in the entirety of their existence together. What a shame. Sonic then amusingly shows lack of self-awareness by assuming she wasn't being sarcastic, and Tails is crying while this is all happening. It's hard for me to be sympathetic though, only because his tears are so glaringly miscolored as being outright blue. When I find tears a lot easier to buy and a lot more emotionally swaying when they're colored more realistically. Like if they were colored mostly white, clear, with a very light blue. Most of the time, tears are colored outright blue or white in the comic, like you're crying die. So it's hard for me to find them sympathetic like they're intended to be because it just takes me out of it. In the next story, the Mecha Dragons chase all the dragons away from the city, and after Dulcie wakes up in a daze apologizing to her ex it was all her fault, she sees a young dragon that doesn't recognize her, probably because when she was exiled he was too young to form permanent memories. He tells her that the defenders are about to lay down a suppressing fire, but then Dulcie immediately gets treated like a traitor and threatened with execution by the other dragons, with the elder having no gratitude for the fact that she saved someone's life. Dulcie's told that she'll be dealt with later, while all chained up. She notices that the dragons couldn't maintain the flame wall somehow, and a lot of them are getting roboticized because apparently there was a roboticizer brought with the Mega Dragons that we couldn't see. Soon, a Mecha Dragon crashes into her from the sky, immediately crushing her to death to die a horrible, tragic death. Nah, just kidding. Instead, Logic takes a back seat and she's not even injured. In fact, after she throws the robot dragon off her, she notices that her ring inhibitor is gone, allowing her to breathe fire again. How could a mere collision have knocked a piercing out of someone? I at least like that they thought to have her cauterize the wound with fire breath from her nostrils, rather than pretending a piercing being smacked out wouldn't cause any damage. That was a nice touch. Dulcie then self-awarely says that she's going to take out years of frustration and anger out on the Mecha Dragons. How'd she know this? Has she been to a therapist or something? And somehow I'm expected to believe that Dulcie alone turned the tide of the battle, even though she's just one person and there's plenty of other dragons around. Somehow, the Elder is now the grateful type, when he wasn't before, especially arbitrary since I'm having a hard time believing she was necessary. Oh right, they actually mentioned the fact that when all those Mecha Dragons got melted, it killed innocent Robians, causing Dulcie to cry because she melted her entire family and ruined the chance that she'd ever get them back. I wouldn't appreciate the excess baggage of her having nagging parents around, honestly. Dulcie is told that instead of passing away, a dragon spirit returns to the primal fire and will be reborn in an upcoming generation, so all of her family will be back. And with that, Dulcie is pardoned for being one dragon in an entire army of them already doing stuff. And another leap of overly convenientness, she's made the official ambassador to the dragons, And her black cinch ring is redundantly restored even though she proved she didn't need it earlier, just to make her feel better. This ending is so insultingly sweet and saccharine. It would have made much more sense if she just remained an outcast. It doesn't gel well at all with the events of the story leading up to it. The first story was by Ken Penders, and it's about Patch's plan being stopped by Sonic noticing the needle in the sleeve because he was already suspicious of him. Patch really wasn't thinking ahead here if he honestly thought that Elias wouldn't notice a prick in his arm from the needle and realize in front of everyone something was wrong. And he was especially delusional in thinking he still had power over Sonic and could actually get him called a traitor when his needle was exposed in front of everyone. He just couldn't accept the idea that his plan had crumbled apart from a factor he couldn't predict, which was Elias returning for Sally's sake after he left for Sally's sake. Considering that Sonic thought that Patch was just a big wuss when that's only an Antoine thing, it felt forced to me that Sonic figured out he was Patch so easily, but it did make sense. He made it really obvious. Antoine comes back, and Sonic, despite thinking earlier that Sally should be with him, goes on with his new relationships with Fiona that came out of nowhere with no build-up and effort whatsoever. They really didn't care about shipping him with anyone else, did they? I mean, even with friends, they had Ross and Rachel with other people after their breakup. It's a shame too, because ignoring what happens later, you gotta admit they have better chemistry than this total opposite Sally did with him. Fiona's cautious, sure, but no more cautious and level-headed than most of the others, like Bunny or Rotor. And she can be optimistic. She's snarky and witty like Sonic, she's open-minded like Sonic, and she responds to him saying he's just having a good time with her in a happy way that implies that she's accepting him for who he is. So, open-minded again. With them going into a casual relationship so quickly, Sonic's obviously not in love with Fiona, and Fiona's not showing any signs of loving him either. They just interact like close friends on the rare occasion they have a friendship moment, but that's still better than Sonic and Sally, where Sally does nothing but lecture him on being more careful and telling him to follow the rules. Ultimately, I wouldn't say I'd chip them, they're more like like-minded friends than Antoine and Bunny who actually do love each other, and I've had a little bit of build-up to it. These guys are just trying to have a good time, and I completely get that. They're both lonely at this point, why wouldn't they? And the second story is by Mike Gallagher, and it was really clumsily written, trying to force the predictable happy ending on us. This is a light-hearted tone gone wrong. We were given every indication that Dulcie would always be an outcast from her dragon society, with her saving a child not be given any gratitude, as she was immediately sentenced to be executed. And then after she's inexplicably not crushed to death through a Duke's Ex Machina, she managed to get her fire breath back because a nose ring is somehow taken out of her through that. And I could have accepted that a little better if Dulcie was the only one able to save the day, but no! She joins an entire army of dragons who seem equally as competent as her, despite them trying to have us believe with dialogue alone that she's turned the tide of the battle. She's just one person, and yet somehow that completely useless pitching in convinces the dragon, once incapable of gratitude, to not only stop seeing her as a traitor for simply wanting to immigrate, but also causes him to make her the ambassador of his kind, which is totally pointless since she could have just narrowly escaped punishment still being an outcast, and it wouldn't have affected anything. Also, her entire family being torched was needlessly dark. We could have easily not had those specific Mega Dragons being the one who fought in the army there. And you know what I realized the day after I wrote this review? Why didn't the Bam de-roboticize Dulcie's family like they did with every other Robian? What, were they too big for the spaceship? So the story had no reason to exist. The whole story was just clumsily written, not leading to the happy ending well at all, and rested entirely on a Deus Ex Machina. Once again, the story in this issue that was by Ken Penders ended up being better written.